Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Yeah.
You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show till Mets do us part. John from Brooklyn, Ibby reps NJ. We're the other team, I don't care what your friends say. Mets fans, we focus like a sensei. Listen to the podcast Monday, Wednesday. Made a couple bad plays, but we still won. Character, yup, we're gonna build some. Are you gonna check the pod? It's real fun. Just like Mookie, I will sign. So invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show.
Available now on all streaming platforms. If you love the New York Mets, check out Til Mets Do Us Part. Enough rapping. Let's get to yapping.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Til Mets Do Us Part, where we are live on YouTube, live on Twitter, like we are each and every single week. And I myself don't know what the opposite of a day late and a dollar short is, but that's what we are doing here today. Don't adjust your screens. As a matter of fact, I hope you found your way to your screens, whether it's on your computer, on your smart TV, on your phone, on your iPad, wherever it is you like to watch this show, because we are one day early for a myriad of reasons that we will get into, some of which I'm sure you're already aware of. But if not, don't worry, we will cover that too. It is trade season. It is trade deadline week. The Mets just had a 7-game win streak snapped in what is kind of the worst way that you can have a 7-game win streak snapped. We will get into all of it. But first, my name is John Saponaro, coming to you from North Hollywood, California. And that means my co-host, Matt Ibanez, holding things down back in New Jersey. Ibby, already 101 Dalmatians, 101 folks watching us live. And I'm sure that number will continue to grow because, again, 'tis the season after all. But before we talk about that, how you feeling, man?
I'm doing pretty good, John. Thank you for asking. As always, it is hot. I am melting over here in Jersey, but I'm doing the best that I can because this is my favorite time of the year. I love trade season. I love the off season. I love playoff time. I love all those times, but trade season is always a fun one because the rumors and playing GM and, of course, the banter that it brings, good and bad, and there has been plenty of bad, and we'll get into all of that stuff. But all in all, it's always a fun time. I'm excited. Wednesday, red lights on. Like you said, we already got 118 in here, and it is climbing. I expect that number to get to probably its highest of heights than we've had in recent shows. So let's do it. Let's have some fun.
Let's have some fun indeed. If this is your first time to the show, if you're watching live, welcome to the show. Normally, we go live Wednesdays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. Like I said in the open, a day earlier today. Why? Because the Mets are out here on the West Coast, and that means that tomorrow's day game would directly interfere with when we would try to record. It would push the recording so late on the East Coast to a point where we really don't want to do it. EB really doesn't have the free time and the flexibility with his kids and everything to push that back to who knows what time. I don't know, 8 o'clock, maybe East Coast time, and really didn't want to deal with all that. Plus, on a different note, I'm going to the game tomorrow down in San Diego with my buddy and friend of the show, wonderful comedian Joe Prano. He and I are taking the trip down to San Diego to see the game. So that means that we wouldn't be able to do a full-fledged episode this week, which we didn't want to deprive you of, especially here during trade season. And by the way, shout out to Joe Prano, who just got married over the weekend.
Congrats.
So
beautiful.
Congratulations to Joe. Like I said, great comic, friend of the show. Before we get into the conversation, let's shout out all the folks who are here with us in the live chat. Yes, the number is growing, 166 now, 168. It seems like people keep jumping in as we speak, and that is wonderful. We got Truman Quinn in the house. We got Clink. We got Armand. We have Odd Villain is here. We have Bobby Starr over on Twitter, who I believe is a new commenter. Welcome, Bobby.
Welcome.
We
Welcome,
have
Bobby.
Matt Talks Rangers. What's going on with you? We got Carlos Ramos is back in the house. We have Brad. I think I might have said that already. Always Froza, Rosie K, Cindy, and that is it as far as the live chat goes. Welcome to all of you. And to everybody who prefers to sit in the background and just be quiet, welcome to you as well. I do want to get this one out of the way. It's not Mets related, but I just want to say it because I don't want to get through the entire show, which is only going to be about an hour today anyway. Armand brings this up. R.I.P. Ryan Sandberg. All the love to his family. And fuck cancer. Ryan Sandberg passed away yesterday. Sad. Sucks. Long battle.
Too young. Way too young.
Way too young.
Way too young.
You know, he was battling cancer for a while, but it's still stunning. And it still sucks, again, especially when somebody is as young as he was. And baseball loses a legend. And that sucks. It just always sucks. And I don't mean to start on a somber note, but I didn't want to get through what would be a shorter show today and not mention it. So shout out to Armand for bringing it up, because it's just a bummer, man. It's just a bummer to the baseball community when something like that happens.
Absolutely. It just seems as though he was such a good person. You heard it from people that were, worked when it was with the Phillies and of course Chicago. It just seems as though, like I said, it's too soon. Cancer is the worst. And to have someone taken at such a young age of 65, like it's sad. It's unfortunate. And, sending all the best to his, his family and all of his loved ones.
Absolutely. So no great segue from a topic like that, which is normally why we don't open with it. But again, do you want to mention part of the reason why we're doing a shorter show today is because on Thursday at the tail end of the trade deadline from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern, so going right up until the very end when the trade deadline has reached, Ibby and I will be joining the boys over at Mets Weekly for a live conversation of all the trades that will go down, whether it has to do with the Mets or not. If a player that the Mets have been linked to, targeted, or whatever goes somewhere else, we'll basically break it all down. We've done it, I think, in some way, shape, or form for the last couple of years. It's also why we wanted to move this show up a day to make sure we got in our regular show. So you can watch that over at Mets Weekly, or you can watch that on the YouTube channel that you're watching us on right now, which is our channel, Til Mets Do Us Part. Ibby, I don't want to spend a lot of time on the game last night, but just very quickly, I said in the open, the Mets lose a 7-game win streak in probably the most frustrating way to lose a 7-game win streak, which is a game that they had in hand, a game that the umpire and fuck that dude.
Oh my God.
Tried as he might to take that game away from the Mets. Mark Vientos gets robbed of a home run, would not be denied, comes back later, like, go ahead and catch this one, hits the grand slam. And then Montas and Huáscar Brazoban immediately cough it up. And then Ronnie Mauricio, not to be outdone, he hits a game-tying home run. Gregory Soto, who looked great the day before, had a little bit of a mental error, didn't look great, on the mound either. And the Mets wind up losing that game. I don't know, Ibby, there's not a lot you could say. They just won 7 in a row. It kind of is what it is. But maybe you'll agree with me on this. If my team is in the midst of a win streak, and let's call a win streak of significance like 5 or more, I would rather lose a game where you get blanked 5-0 and you just don't show up than lose a game the way that the Mets lost last night. I don't know if you agree with that, but to me, that is the worst way to lose a winning streak. What happened last night? Something like that.
The West Coast games are always rough for me, and I felt like last night's game was just really dragging. I think it was like 12:30 East Coast time. It was still the 6th inning. I was like, there's no way I'm getting through this. And at that point, I had already seen, Montas, cough up a lot of runs, leave with runners on. Brazoban comes in, unable to do the job, really, adds fuel to the fire. Things kind of just blow up. They lose the lead. And then I pass out because I'm like, you know what? I wasn't feeling it. I was like, I don't think they got it today. I think this is the end of it. I'm going to catch some Z's. And then, I wake up and I see Ronnie hits the home run. He ties the game. And then they lose in walk-off fashion. Very frustrating. And I agree with you. Like, I would rather just be a quick one where it's 5-0. I'm not on the edge of my seat. And shout out to everyone that, stayed up, especially on the East Coast time of watching that game and watching it unfold the way that it did. Not the easiest of ways to fall asleep. And shout out to Aunt Rivera over at Subway to Shea. If anybody saw his reaction during that game when it came to the Vientos Grand Slam. And then, of course, how it ends up happening, in the end. Very frustrating, but very funny on Ant's part. So if he hops into the comments here, I'll make sure to bring it up again. But all in all, it was a very frustrating watch for the 6 innings that I was awake for, and then just catching the rest of it when I woke up. It's just, I agree with you. It's just a very easy game to get angry at, but you wash it, you move forward. You got another one to go after today and try to win the series.
Yeah, and you know what? Rosie says, good point here. Hate that the Mets missed an opportunity to pick up a game on the Phillies. That's another thing that's important. Look, none of these games are make or break right now in terms of, the Mets and the Phillies have played themselves into a position where it's probably going to be close the rest of the way through. The Mets had a big lead. They squandered it. That sucks, but sometimes building a big lead is knowing that you can squander a bit of it and still be in the mix. And that's very much where the Mets firmly find themselves in. Again, barring some kind of collapse from Philadelphia, I think there's going to be a back and forth with these teams throughout the rest of the season. So while nothing is like, oh my God, I can't believe we didn't pick up a game, this is so crucial. You just want to put as much distance. We're getting into creating space season, Ibby, that you like to, mention. We're getting into that part of the calendar, and really once you get into August, the dog days, September, certainly, but I would consider, starting to give yourself real distance in August is the name of the game. And a couple days shy of that, the Mets were unable to do that. And that sucks. Also, remember what I said last week, the Mets are in the midst of playing 9 games with San Francisco, San Diego, and San Francisco back home again. And those are 2 teams that are basically right behind the Mets as far as, the wild card or now behind the Phillies, you know what I mean, as far as the wild card standing goes. So you want to beat those teams too. They handled their business with a great road sweep of San Francisco, who I think is a little bit more pretender than contender anyway, although they do have some talent. But, here you see a San Diego team that's been a thorn in the Mets side for the last 3 years, who is a very good team. And to be able to go into their house, and again, the umps tried to give the game to them, and shout out to Fernando Tatis Jr. for making that incredible play. But then the Mets were about to win that game and should have won that game, and they didn't. And all of that together, it sucks. And I don't know how else to put it other than what you just said, which is you have to bounce back, try to win a series now, win today, win tomorrow after I make the 2.5-hour drive to San Diego and win a series, and then all is forgiven, right? Carson, speaking of Mets Weekly, we just teased the show that we're doing on Thursday with him and everybody else over at Mets Weekly, says, goes to show you how much giving away free outs will come back to bite you. Defense matters. Stearns doesn't just say it for decoration, which brings me to the conversation that I think will dominate the entirety of this show here today. And it's twofold, threefold conversation. Ibby, it has to do with Mark Vientos. It has to do with Luis Robert Jr. or Cedric Mullins or Harrison Bader or Roman Liriano or Stephen Kwan, right? Some combination of outfielder that you think can play center field for the Mets. And it has to do, to a slightly lesser extent, with a player like Jeff McNeil. And right now, the thought process, I'm going to leave Vientos out of it for a moment.
Okay.
The thought process right now from a lot of people, Mets content creators, Mets fans, a lot of folks, is that Luis Robert Jr. is not worth acquiring. Or they will only give up a bag of baseballs for Luis Robert Jr. I bring this up to start the show because you and I, as of last week, sort of differed on this as well. I think that acquiring a center fielder for this team is very, very, very important for everything that Carson just mentioned and everything that David Stearns has said since day one. Run prevention and defense matters. This is not a dig on Jeff McNeil. Jeff McNeil, we joked about it. He has played a much better center field than I would have thought, than you would have thought. I think in some cases it'd be than the Mets themselves would have.
Agreed.
Thought. But I tweeted it and I said it on the show last week and I stand by it. In 2015, the Mets acquired Yoenis Cespedes, a ultra mega thoroughbred horse of an athlete, to play center field, a place that he had played in the past. He's a true outfielder, and they moved him over and they played him in center field because that's where the need was, and they felt that he was best athletically suited to do that. He is, as a joke, conservatively 400 times the athlete that Jeff McNeil is, and it took one play, one pitch into the World Series for it to cost us by not having a true center fielder. And then you get deeper into that 2015 World Series where the Mets had the pitching advantage, not just in the rotation, but probably a bit in the bullpen too, with as well as some of those guys were dealing, and the year that Familia had. You wonder, looking back 10 years later, how the Mets could have ever lost, despite the fact that that's a team that puts the ball in play and a little bit of the kryptonite to the Mets strikeout pitchers and stuff. But Ibby, when you put the ball in play, that means you have to play defense.
It's true.
And let me remind you of that team, Yoenis Cespedes playing out of position in center field, not a good defender in that spot. You had Curtis Granderson on the back nine of his career playing right field without a right field arm. Not a great position for him. You had Michael Conforto as a 20-something-year-old rookie playing left field, who was probably the best defensive player on the team, and he wasn't even as good defensively then as he became later in his career. First base was Lucas Duda, who outright cost the game. Second base was Daniel Murphy, who was not a good defender at second. Of course, we all know what happened to Ruben Tejada with Chase Utley, and that meant that Wilmer Flores was your starting shortstop. Oh my God, what a joke. David Wright, as good as he is, the captain, the retired number. This was David Wright post-injury. This was David Wright, who was not exactly the same. And your catcher was Travis d'Arnaud. Ibby, those 9 names I just listed, probably not David Wright and probably to a lesser extent Michael Conforto, is the reason why the Mets basically lost the World Series. That and a bad pitch here or there. So this thought process, just 10 years later, that the Mets can go and play Jeff McNeil in center field at least even, 65% of the time and hope to win a championship is misguided. Period. They have to. If you don't, we can talk later about the prospects that you would give up and if you would trade Vientos for Luis Robert. I don't care if they get Luis Robert. I don't care if they get Cedric Mullins. I don't care if they get Harrison Bader, if Stephen Kwan can play center field, if they get Duran, if they get Roman Liriano. They have to get a guy who can play center field, who is a legitimate center fielder. I have my preferences. I'm sure you have yours, but this minimizing the need is insanity to me.
I mean, everything you said is proper. Defense does matter. David Stearns has talked so much about defense and run prevention, and a lot of people have poked fun at said run prevention because of how the defense has been for the season. And now when it's time to shore up said defense, people are against it because they don't like the given players. So as always, I throw to the chat. I know where some of the answers are going to go. So I'm throwing to you, chat. If you do not like the idea of Luis Robert Jr., because John's highlighting his defense, I ask you, who do you want to play center field? And I know some of you are going to say Drew Gilbert. I know some of you might say Jet Williams. I know some of you might even have somebody else. Okay, but to bring up Armand's point right now, even though this is a name that was just recently brought up, that being Stephen Kwan. Stephen Kwan's only played 8 games, 4 games started, and 1 complete game in center field for his career, per Baseball Reference. So it's not as though he's an automatic when it comes to center either, because you don't know. And I'm not even sure if that's going to make sense for the Mets. Do I like Kwan as a player? Sure. Is he a power hitter? No. Can he play center field? Maybe, but I feel as though we should be looking at pieces that can shore up the position. Harrison Bader, Carson mentioned this last night in our chat, and I agree with him. I feel as though that is something that's very underwhelming. It's very much not the move that you should be making if you're trying to win, because I think you can do a little bit better. You can shoot for ceiling. David Stearns has been talking a lot about ceiling the last couple of weeks and talking about the starting pitching. If I can add someone that has some ceiling to it, I think that makes more sense as opposed to floor. I'm not against it. I still think that some floor could be added to the pitching, but the point I'm making here is he's mentioning ceiling. The people, especially in the chat right now, because I do have a poll running, And the poll is, would you trade Drew Gilbert and Blade Tidwell for Luis Robert Jr.? Now, that is one that I had mentioned on Straight Outta Flushing a couple days ago with Dexter Henry. It's one that John mentioned.
Shout out to you, by the way. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
It's okay.
That was a great podcast it was a great segment with you and Dexter Henry.
Thank you.
I even watched the lead-in, which was him with Joel Sherman, which was also great. But hats off to you. You did a great job. You and him were fantastic. And that was part of the reason for my tweet today, which was Blade Tidwell and Drew Gilbert should be enough to get you that. Like that, I took your tweet or your thought process and saying that should be enough. It should be more than enough.
Yeah, and I joked with you and others as well in our chat about, and I know Hebrew's in here too, and he wasn't a big fan because I did catch some of the live comments once the show premiered that a lot of people did not like my deals because they thought I was giving up too much in a lot of them. But again, you have to give to get, and there is some depth to this Mets farm system, more so than it has in years past. But I just think that when it comes to the prospect of Tidwell and Gilbert, when I see people saying that it's too much, I ask you this, and I said it on the show, then I'll say it here now. If there was, and I'll say it to you too, Hebrew, because I know you're a guy that says just call up Gilbert. If that was the case, it would have been done already. If David Stearns thought that that was the answer, he'd be here already. You're not really hearing that when it comes to the rumors that are coming out from the writers when they're saying, oh, if the Mets don't land said pitchers that they want, if nothing materializes, they will plan on calling up Nolan McLean or Brandon Sproat or Jonah Tong because they believe that they can come in and do that. You're not hearing that with Drew Gilbert. You're not hearing that about Jet Williams. You're not hearing that about Carson Bench. Can those guys be a part of said future, that being Williams and Bench? I think so. But if Gilbert, who's in AAA right now, was the answer, I think he would be here already, and this team would not be shopping in the center field aisle. But they are. So when I offer these players in these deals, I'm not giving up the farm at all. When I had someone today say to me that I'm not going to mortgage my future by giving up those two for Robert because they don't like him, I go, how am I mortgaging my future by giving up Drew Gilbert and Blade Tidwell? I'm not giving up any of the top pitchers. I'm not giving up my top outfielder because that's Carson Bench. Don't you think it's telling? Don't you think it's telling, John? Don't you think it's telling to the chat and the listeners? Don't you think it's telling that ever since this Mets farm system has been adding more talent and certain talent has been making the jump that Drew Gilbert has been dropping in the overall rankings? You don't think that that's telling? I feel like it is. I'm not giving up Carson Bench. Carson Bench is brand new to the system, and he's already jumped him into the top 5 ahead of Drew Gilbert. I see guys like AJ Ewing that are making the jump, and they're ahead of Drew Gilbert. So it's like I don't feel as though I'm giving up the world in this.
There are people who know prospects better than you and me that think Nick Morabito has a higher ceiling than Drew Gilbert. Like, I can't.
People, I was saying this to Master Flip over on Twitter, and I love Flip. We were just having a good, healthy back and forth. He doesn't want Robert based off of that deal that was mentioned because I was responding to your comment. And
sure,
I was saying to him, I was like, you got to understand something, because he was saying, like, I'm not giving up my 10th and 12th prospect for this guy. And I go, you can't be married to those numbers because those rankings are not always refreshed by the day. We always think that everything is so quick. But in reality, a lot of those things are not refreshed until, 3/4 of the way through a season, because they want to see how guys progress. And I could tell you right now, when I see people in the comments saying, and this is when I know people don't really know, when they're saying to me, oh, I'd rather trade Jacob Reamer, I'd rather trade AJ Ewing. I'm like, are you aware of the seasons that those guys are having? Like, are you aware of the season that Jesus Baez is having? Like, these guys might not be ranked as high yet, but when it re-ranks, these guys are going to be higher. So you want to give up more talent as opposed to the talent that I'm offering. It doesn't make a lick of sense in that way. So another thing, when it comes to someone like Robert, I said last week, I'm still iffy. I am, because I don't know. But if that was the price, I'm not losing sleep over it, because I'm not giving away guys that I think are going to hurt this system or this team moving forward. And that's the biggest thing. So when you tell me if that was the case, it would cost those two, I'm all for taking the flyer, if you will, because losing those two, it's not the end of the world. And it's also telling, as someone mentioned in the chat before, I think it was Rosie, the Phils are after Robert. The Padres have been after Robert. It makes sense for them as well because they're looking for outfield help. That is your direct competition. There's a reason why people are going after, because it's a lottery ticket. It is. But you know what else is a lottery ticket? Your prospects.
Absolutely. I'm going to jump into the comments here because there's a lot of stuff. Carlos Ramos saying, and it's Carlos Ramos and Hebrew Hammer leading the charge here on the Drew Gilbert anti-Luis Robert thing. I'm embarrassed for some fans that are even talking about Luis Robert. It goes to show you that Mets fans have no clue and winning is not the priority. I don't understand that comment at all. I think we all want to win. We may all have different ideas about how to get to winning. You may not want Luis Robert, and that's fine. If you think the Mets don't need a center fielder and we can just play McNeil in center field, that's to me, that is more indicative of not wanting to win. I'm sorry, I don't know how else to say it. D saying that were the Mets hoping Siri and Taylor would hit? Yes, the Mets were hoping that
they were hoping Siri could hit 20.
Correct. The Mets were hoping that the tandem of Taylor and Siri would outperform offensively the tandem of Harrison Bader and Taylor, because Harrison Bader and Taylor are two. I hate to generalize this way, but Ibby, their games are similar in terms of defense, but what they could provide offensively. Siri is a faster player than both of them, which is impressive because neither one of them are necessarily slouches on the base paths or defensively as far as speed goes. You've always alluded to how Siri was the best center fielder in baseball and going to his left towards right field, covering for some of Juan Soto's deficiencies. And also Siri's a guy who, for better or for worse, sells out for power. And if he hits 180 but hits 20-something home runs like he did a couple of years ago, and you combine that with Taylor, I think the Mets thought they had the makings of a center field platoon, even though they're both the same handed hitter. That would be something that would work for them. Well, guess what? Siri didn't really hit in the short sample size that he was here, and then he hurt himself, and he's been hurt since, and now they have nowhere else to go because they don't have a lot of depth in the outfield, specifically in center field. So it didn't work out for them. Hebrew Hammer said, completely disagree with you, John, as is his right, as is Carlos's right, but
that's fine.
Follows it up by saying, has anybody seen McNeil make an error lately or not get to a ball he needs to that has affected the game? No, not yet, but he doesn't have the range and he doesn't have the arm. That's it. Did you see the Mets play Taylor 2 out of 3 games in center field in San Francisco because of how difficult that center field is, despite the fact that Taylor is like 0 for the last million? I saw that because they didn't trust McNeil to play center field in that center field. So has it hurt them yet? No. Can it? Yeah, still can. Here's one from Carson. If you're relying on a prospect to take center field in a pennant race with the resources that this franchise has now, it is a cop-out mindset. I don't care what can be. And Ibby, that brings me to sort of the next point, which is the NL is winnable. The NL East is winnable. I look over to the AL. The World Series is winnable. The Mets are, now that they've gotten Soto and they've added a second lefty into the pen, 2 or 3 tweaks away from being good enough to win a World Series in 2025. So I have guys I don't want to trade too. You guys like Drew Gilbert, take him out of the conversation. I like Mauricio a lot. I don't want to trade Mauricio. I would trade Mauricio in any deal that would make the Mets a favorite to win the World Series. So I don't want to trade him for David Bednar, but if you told me David Bednar and Cedric Mullins make you a World Series team, okay. If that makes you as good as you can possibly be based on the people that get dealt at this deadline, then I want to be as good as I could possibly be. The goal is to start the season strong enough so that your front office looks at this team and says, can they win or not? If they can, let's do everything we can to add to it. 2 words, asset allocation. The resources the Mets have. Those resources are money. Those resources are prospects. And I'm sorry, Ibby, like, I don't think that calling up a guy to play center field who has never played in the majors, when you're already expecting Vientos to contribute in a down season, Beatty to contribute in what has been an up and down career, Alvarez to contribute, which has been an up and down career, and Mauricio to contribute, which has been a very short sample size because of the injury. Oh, and also Luis Angel Acuna is still on the roster. You're expecting him to contribute. So what, we're going to just add another question mark? Let's call up Drew Gilbert. How does that make you closer to winning? Sorry, guys. I hate to be on one today. It doesn't.
It's wild how, look, and it's fine. Like, everyone's going to have their opinions, and they always do, about what they think is proper for the team, player wise, prospect wise. Everyone has their feelings. I also question a lot of the people that speak on prospects, because I don't think a lot of them even have watched them a single game, a single at bat. It's not always just the highlights that you see, because when you see highlights, it's always the good stuff. It's not always the stuff that when they're not performing. And there is a transition period when it comes to being called up. And I don't think that that's something that the Mets should be, really focusing on right now. And again, Stearns has not lied to us. He said in the presser a couple of weeks ago, I don't see a bat within our system coming up right now and helping. He said it. He hasn't lied to you once. So why can we sit here and think that this is what's going to happen, regardless if Gilbert has been hitting? I don't see it. I think they're going to try their best to go about filling in center with someone else, whomever it may be. And if it doesn't work out, they're going to try to improve the offense in another way so they can solidify the back end 5 through 9, and they'll go from there. But I have a hard time with people that are so adamant about Drew Gilbert. I really do. I'm sorry, but I do.
Listen, again, we all have our favorites, and we all have the guys that we don't like as much, but you have to listen. A couple, like last week, when the Mets were just starting the winning streak and getting back into it, look at this lineup. Everybody's homegrown except Lindor and Soto. Oh my God, isn't that amazing? In a way, yeah. But Ibby, let me ask you a question. Of all of those players that are homegrown and in the lineup, who are the best 2 players?
Now?
Excuse me. No. Let me rephrase that.
Sure.
Of all the players that were in the lineup, including the homegrown guys and the guys from outside the organization, who are the 2 best players? It's Lindor and Soto.
Oh, yes, of course, yes.
Lindor is better than Pete. Soto's better than Pete. They're both better than Brandon Nimmo. Those are the only 2 conversations even worth having. None of those guys, as much as we love them, probably even, first of all, none of those players, none of them will ever be Juan Soto. And the likelihood of any of those homegrown guys, everybody's so goo-goo gaga about being in the everyday lineup, the odds of them even being close to Lindor is insane. So it's cool. And it's also important. I understand financially it's important. You get guys on the league minimum. You have guys in their pre-arbitration years. And then you can go out and you can spend $30 million on a player. And you can spend more money than anybody's ever spent to go get Soto. I understand how it works. But I'm not celebrating a game on July 27th that features 7 homegrown players in the starting lineup more than I'm celebrating a World fucking Series win. I don't care if every player on the team is from a different team. I don't care if half of them are from Mars. Get your priorities straight.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. It's just not worth it. And again, I am sorry for being on one. It's so frustrating because if you don't want to trade, like I just saw Hebrew say, the guy you want to trade is Beatty. If you're dead set on trading somebody. I agree. I don't like Beatty either. More as much as Mauricio. I don't like his bat as much as Vientos.
Right.
But okay, but you can't just trade one guy who may or may not have value. I also saw Hebrew say, oh, now this stuff with Brandon Lowe, who needs him? Bad defensive player. Listen, I don't think he fits the Mets, but the Mets have been enamored with him for 2 years. And Ibby, have you looked at his offensive numbers? I think he might help. Again, I don't think he fits. He's not the guy I'd go get because that means you're probably playing McNeil in center field for the rest of the year.
Exactly.
But you don't want Robert. Okay. You don't want Lowe. Okay. Well, you don't want Robert because he's not been good. Fine. You don't want Lowe because he's not good defensively. Okay. You don't want Mullins because he's a rental. And you don't want Mullins because he hasn't been good. And you don't want this guy because he's not a center field. Who do you want? Well, just you know what? Don't get anybody. Call up Drew Gilbert and come what may. You guys are talking in the comments right now about malpractice. If the Mets don't trade for more players and they just keep it in-house, that's malpractice. Not with the resources they have, the ability to take on any contract, and the ability to trade from a deep farm system to get the players they need. And I'm off the soapbox. But that to me, that's the malpractice. Don't you need to add to this team?
Yes, we've been talking about how we have to add from the outside. We're less than a month removed from talking about how this team needed help and they had to go outside the organization to try and find it. I'm not about putting that pressure on those minor leaguers. I have no problem with those players. I'm not sitting here saying that I hate Drew Gilbert either. That's not what I've spoken highly on Drew Gilbert before, but it's like, guys got to understand you have to give to get. You're going to say you don't like the fact that it's Luis Robert or it's whoever else. He could get dealt for one of the bullpen arms that we're talking about, being in connection to. It's all possible. It really is. So you can't be attached to every single prospect, because as much as I know Mets fans love their homegrown talents and they like homegrown Mets and that's their kinship to the team, if you will, because they love it so much. Again, some of that goes out the window only a little bit because you still have to grow from within. I understand that. But when, to Carson's point before, you have the resources, you have the ability, you have a growing farm system, a better farm system, an ever evolving farm system that has a lot more depth to it now. You can deal from it. It doesn't hurt as much anymore. This is the first time in a long time where this team is actually able to have conversations about good players and only having to give up prospects that are ranked between their 10 to 25. Because it's always been, and we all know this, it's always been when the Mets come to dealings like this, everyone gets angry because it's like, oh, so-and-so only gave up their 12th prospect, but they're asking the Mets for their second prospect. That's not fair. And it's like, well, doesn't that tell you where the Mets system is, where they have to go straight to the top because there's no depth to it? It speaks volumes. It's okay to deal from your depth. It's going to happen, guys. I hate to break it to you, but it will. You're going to lose some people.
Jump back into the comments here. Grant, who's been here, welcome back, Grant. Said a couple things like shout out to us and stuff, but saying, I kind of miss John's crash outs, not going to lie. Thank you. Rosie saying John is right. And Ibby, this is just for, as far as I know, it's just for me. It's just for you. And it's just for Armand. I'm in my carrying cross moment right now. Because here's the thing. Carlos saying, I'm not worried. I have all of John's tweets about Luis Robert bookmark. Receipts are nice. That sounds like somebody who would rather be right than win. And You know what? Bookmark them, because I'll admit that I was wrong. But right now, I'm challenging you. If the Mets get Luis Robert and I was right, you're going to have to come on this show and say that I was right. And we'll see, because I'll admit that I was wrong if I'm wrong.
Right. D
saying great rant. Danger Zone saying, John, you live on the soapbox and I'm here for it. Fine. But I mean, and we'll go into the break on this. Hebrew Hammer saying, and if Gilbert winds up being the next Kelnick, we have about 10 other guys right behind him. And this is what confounds me, because I thought Gilbert was the truth.
Yeah.
We don't have any. If the Mets don't get anyone. Now, listen, if the Mets for some reason don't get anyone, I am all for calling up Gilbert and giving it a shot, seeing what he has. But I don't think that's the right move. If the Mets don't get anyone, Ibby, and they call up Gilbert and he is not good, the Mets don't have anybody else that can come up and play center field. I don't know where these 10 guys are, but they are imaginary.
Right now, you want to add major leaguers. You do. And I
understand.
This is
the time of year where you do it.
And you want guys with some experience, and you don't want to put the it's not as though we're talking about some of these prospects in the light of, top end guys that have been coming up across the league. We don't have a Roman Anthony. That's not what any of those prospects are at the moment. He is a budding superstar that was being held down for the wrong reasons because of money, and he has all the talent when he's showing out for Boston. That's not what these players are. I hate to break it to you, but they're not on that same level. So it's a different story here, because I think that it's best for this team to go outside, bring something in that can help. You want to talk about last year and the downfalls of Robert. And look, I've said before, I said it last week, me and John were on different pages, and it's okay to be that way because we had a healthy conversation. I am not 100% sold on him, but the things that I've seen and the hypothetical that we've thrown out there as a potential deal, I don't think that that's all that bad to take a shot on. I really don't. So it's a different story if John came on here and said, "Hey, Ib, we got to trade for Robert, and you got to trade away Carson Benj and Brandon Sproat." And I would say, "John, you're high. I'm not doing that. It's not happening. No shot in hell. Makes zero sense." And then I'm sure the chat will be with me 1,000% on that one. But I'm going a little bit further down the line, and I'm seeing some lesser talent, if you will, lesser prospect who doesn't have quite the shine as those two, and I'm still being told that I'm crazy and I'm insane. Again, I feel like this week I've quote unquote made it only because everything that I've mentioned, everybody has hated. So I feel as though I finally have broken through that point of like, if you don't have those haters, you don't really have, you're not really popping off if you don't have those haters. So again, it's whatever, but I still think I was very tame in a lot of those. And I still think we're tame in this offer as well.
I keep saying I'm going to get, I'm beside myself with some of these comments. I love you guys. I appreciate you watching the show. I really do. And we can debate and we can disagree. And that's what makes the show fun. And if you guys like my crash outs, even if you're the target of them, that's what makes the show fun. But like Heber saying, Lindor is better than Pete now. Oh my God. Oh my God. Lindor is better than Pete. Lindor is better than Pete. Lindor is a better baseball player, an all-around baseball player than Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso is better at one thing than Lindor, hitting home runs. Have I said anything inaccurate?
No.
I love Pete Alonso. He's my favorite Met currently. Lindor is better than him.
In every way.
I know Juan Soto, I'm not sure if he's doing that on purpose, but Juan Soto, I know he's Ted Williams. I don't remember Ted Williams hitting 150 with runners in scoring position. Yeah, he's had a bad year with runners in scoring position. Are you mad? Do you want to throw back Juan Soto? I wish you would defend Juan Soto as much as you defend Drew fucking Gilbert. Drew Gilbert is 10 fucking minutes away from playing on my men's league team. And I wouldn't even give him center field away from me. And you're sitting here telling me about Juan Soto's not that good. Come on. Jesus Christ. What do you want, Ty Kelly back?
Former guest of the show. Great guy. Great episode.
Yeah, great guest. Honestly, great dude. Great fucking dude.
He was great. Talked to him with him.
I bet you guys thought fucking Josh Satin was going to be the next third baseman, too. Jesus Christ. Maybe I got to go into the break because I'm going to lose my fucking mind.
Go to the break.
If you're watching this show live, we'll be right back. It's a 30-second break. Jesus fucking Christ. I'm John. That's Ibby. This is Til Mets Do Us Part. Yo, just like that, we are back with Til Mets Do Us Part, live on YouTube, live on Twitter. Jesus Christ. The 30 seconds for the first time ever in the history of this show.
Was really needed.
The 30 seconds has never been more needed. And Ibby, I'm not going to lie to you. It should have been longer. I'm not.
My God.
I always say it's a reset. I'm trying, man. I'm trying to reset. Comments like this will help. Let's talk about the real issue, which is getting Sonny Gray on the team for Ibby from Stevie.
Oh my God. I wish, Stevie. My dream come true. I just want to buy that jersey or t-shirt.
Again, I love you guys, but we are disagreeing insanely on this. Hebrew Hammer saying, I wish I can get on the phone or somehow with these guys. I wish we could do that too. It's too difficult to do. I wish we could have people call in. It's such a pain in the ass. I've looked at it. It's not possible. I would love to have these debates and just be like, okay, thanks for the call. All right.
Okay. Got a hand wave them.
It's nothing I want to do more. There's nothing I want to do more, but we can't because it's just such a pain in the ass. We could set up like a voicemail line, but it's not the same. I'd rather have the live chats than the pre-recorded voicemails. Anyway, Ibby, We don't have a lot of time left. Before we get back into this conversation, Jesus Christ, you're going to have to go ahead and take over and hit him with a quick word from our friends over at Independent Safes, because I need to take a sip of water again.
Absolutely, John. IndependentSafes.com. Independent Safes are protecting homes and businesses with secure residential and commercial safes, fireproof peace of mind in every corner. Visit IndependentSafes.com today for security that stands strong. And I think it's time that we do put, our next segment into effect, because it feels like it's fitting to to continue our talk about our friends over at Independent Safes, and our segment that is to, of course, throw away the key. Who's going into the safe this week? Well, I feel as though a lot of the prospect huggers might have to go into the safe this week. I love all of you, but it's not so much out of hate like when it comes to people like Michael Kay and other radio personalities when I do this segment. No. It's more so to just, I'm going to throw away the key, but I'm not going to throw it into the ocean like I normally do. I'm just going to lock you away just to calm down for a little bit and just realize that you have to give to get. You have to try your best to improve with major league talent, and you can have your opinions on said major league talent. But again, we put our trust in the likes of David Stearns, so I'm going to continue to trust his process and what he thinks can help this team. IndependentSafes.com. $99, free shipping. Tell them Til Mets sent you. They'll take care of you.
In the spirit of the segment, my person that I was going to put in the Independent Safe, the Mets kind of did. Breaking news while I was losing my goddamn mind. Mr. Nobody, Huascar Brazoban has been optioned, and Armand following it up. The Mets have re-signed Chris Davinsky, who was here, who they made, they had to DFA in order for some roster juggling. They've brought him back. They've added him to the roster, and Huascar Brazoban has been optioned. He was the person that I was going to throw in the Independent Safe. I was not going to throw him as harshly in the Independent Safe as some people on Mets Twitter did, where they were like, calling him awful and gutless and all those things.
Well, that was a rough tweet, and I just put it there, and I did put out my tweet last night. My classic putting someone on the rocket, but again, that's kind of my shtick. It's meant in good fun, little tongue in cheek, but also a lot of the times when I've put a player on said rocket, some, not all, some actually did take the flight, but a lot of times when I put them on the rocket, they've actually turned it around. So I'm hopeful that Brazoban can turn it around, because I would love to have him humming like he was at one point for this bullpen.
I mean, they were talking at some point that, earlier in the season, he can make the All-Star game. That's how good he was.
Yeah.
And, I see a lot of people in the comments saying, the Mets kind of burnt him out. And I think they probably did. But this is what happens when you don't have enough relief pitching, and, best laid plans. Some of those players got hurt. Minter early, Danny Young, who I don't love, but you don't want to see him get hurt. You're right. And then there's the trickle down effect of Griffin Canning getting hurt and Tyler McGill getting hurt and Max Kranick being ineffective. And then Max Kranick getting hurt and Daniel Nunez being ineffective. And then Daniel Nunez getting hurt. I mean, when you look at some of these guys, Kranick was supposed to be a multiple inning reliever. Well, he got hurt, so he's gone. Budo was supposed to be a multiple inning reliever. He wasn't effective, and he went down for a bit. And then Huascar Brazoban was the multiple inning reliever that was left. And eventually he got burnt out. But that also speaks volumes, Ibby, to what I think will be the last thing that we really talk about here today, which is the importance of minor league options. Huascar Brazoban, despite the fact that he's already like 35 years old, because of when he's brought onto the majors, and he's got he still has options left, which is insane. Having those options is so important. Douglas Barnes brings this up about what happened to Vientos for Robert. I want to leave Robert out of the conversation here, because we already spent enough time talking about that.
Yeah.
When you talk about some of the guys you don't want to trade, and who could you trade and what trades could you stomach, there is a roster crunch thing as well. Mark Vientos is out of options. I like Mark Vientos. I don't want to trade Mark Vientos for Luis Robert. I would. I don't want to, but I would. See how rationally I can just have that without having an insane moment of saying that he's the second coming of Jesus Christ. It's very easy to just understand that, okay, if Vientos is your future at DH, but Beatty is potentially your third baseman, and I don't like Beatty, but some people think that he might be better. And you know what? He's also going to be out of options. And Mauricio, who I do like, who I think could actually be the third baseman, he's also about to be out of options. He's got his last option year right now. And then you talk about a guy like Drew Gilbert. Well, Ibby, he's got to be added to the 40-man roster this offseason. Otherwise, he is going to be subject to the Rule 5 draft. So if he's not in your plans, now's actually the perfect time to trade him. So you have to start to look at these other things too when you're thinking about who do you give up and where and why, and where is the redundancy. You know, Hebrew said earlier, why does Mauricio get all this grace, but, you know, a guy coming off of the injury, but a guy like Drew Gilbert doesn't? Part of that is just positional value. Ronnie Mauricio is never going to play shortstop for the Mets, but the Mets don't know who their third baseman is. I don't know. You don't know. Nobody in the chat knows. The Mets aren't sure. That's why every day it's either Vientos or Mauricio or Beatty, and they're moving things around. And in the offseason, they thought about bringing in another third baseman, and there's talks about bringing in an infielder. And then it was like, oh, could they go get Eugenio Suarez? They're not sure. So there's going to be more life to a guy who can play third base than there is to a guy who may not actually even be able to play center field in the major leagues in Drew Gilbert. Yeah. Because Drew Gilbert's not going to play left field because Brandon Nimmo signed for another 6 years. And he's not going to play right field because Juan Soto signed for another 14 years. So, but right now, who's the third baseman of the future for the Mets? You could sit here and you can make a case for any one of them. You could tell me any one of those guys is the third baseman. You could tell me it's Beatty and I believe you. You could tell me it's Vientos and I believe you. You could tell me it's Mauricio and I believe you. You could even tell me to a slightly lesser extent that it's Acuna or Jet Williams and I would believe you. So you know, that's part of it too. You have to start to look at who is expendable because of their skill set, who's expendable because of their 40-man roster position, and who's expendable because of their lack of options. And that's another thing that goes into trading, especially at the deadline. I don't understand how people don't miss that part of it.
Flexibility is obviously a big part of all this, and Vientos being out of options does, put that into question. And I think there is, a lot of reasons as to why he's been mentioned the last week. If you want to trust the people that are putting the name out there, that being Andy Martino. If you don't, I have my feelings on Martino, but his name's being put out there by others as well. So it's kind of like a sell low, if you will. He hits the grand slam last night. He's had a rough year. Me and John have both defended Vientos. We put a lot on him coming into the season. I predicted, one of my bold predictions was he was going to lead all third basemen in Major League Baseball when it came to home runs. So it's not like I don't like the guy. It's not like I don't believe in the guy, but it's about what can help this team. It's about the flexibility. And it's the fact that, when I see something, especially today, like today really bothered me. And usually I'm all about defending players and hearing players out. But when I see Vientos run to Anthony DeComo, and pretty much it came across to me like boo-boo face, where it's like he doesn't like that he's being talked about. He doesn't like the fact that he's, always mentioned in trades and what have you. It's like, you can't play the victim here. You cannot. When I'm holding it right here, shout out to Armand for sending me this. You're on the cover of SI. You have a lot of baseball projection systems put you at 30-plus home runs. You have people like myself and others predicting you to be the protection for Pete Alonso and to be the guy that's going to continue to be a 30-plus home run bat, the potential future third baseman for this team. You're given copious amounts of chances to do these things, and you fail. It's not management that's in the box. It's you that's in the box. And I understand the sophomore slump. I do. And I know it's tough. I know it's hard. I'm not trying to say he's a bad ball player, but you cannot come out and complain like this, especially during trade season, where you have other people on this team, where this fan base has been so quick to get them out of here. Shout out to Keith for saying people want, and Carson along, in the same camp, and so is John, where it's like they would have traded Brett Beatty for a Metro card. Get him out of here. He stinks. Okay. But when you mention Vientos, you're not as quick, even though he comes out and says comments like this, where everyone else is trying their best to find a way to help the team. You can hate Brett Beatty all you want. Guys playing third, guys playing second, guys worked out in the outfield. You can hate Jeff McNeil all you want. Guy plays second, guy could play any spot in the outfield. Okay. They're trying to show value for the team because they want to be here. Mark Vientos has been a butcher at third base and hasn't hit.
After you and I
As
both
DH.
defended him as a third baseman too.
And we defend him as a third baseman because we said your defense is good enough if you're hitting, but you're not hitting. But everyone wants to come to the A because you see him do what he did last year and like, oh, it's there, it's there, it's there. Well, I get that. But right now, this team is trying to win. We said at the beginning of the season that expectations change when you sign a Juan Soto. Your expectations go through the roof. I like homegrown Mets. I love the fact that he had postseason success. He had 30-plus home runs across the entire year. You know, like, I want him to succeed. But if you're telling me also that I can improve set flexibility, and I can improve whether it's my bullpen, whether it is bullpen with a guy with years, obviously, or I can get a big-time starting pitcher if I include Mark Vientos in a deal, it's something you have to entertain. We can't always be afraid of what a player is going to become because you don't know. Baseball is not always, that black and white. And they didn't like in the comments before when I mentioned it. I was like, for every PCA, there is a Jared Kelnick. It's not always going to be that you gave up a superstar. It doesn't always work that way. But that's just kind of my stance on it. I didn't like the article with Vientos. And look, I understand being upset because you want to be in a place. I get that. But at the same time, everyone else that has been put into a similar position has put their head down and they've just worked and they've provided value for the team. That's it.
And then there's I appreciate this comment from Jose, who's saying Vientos has more upside than Roberts. Just plug him in at DH. I don't even necessarily disagree. Vientos, I do think Luis Robert has more upside than Vientos. So I guess I do disagree. Just because he's a better athlete, he's a he has 5-tool talent, and Vientos does not. So,
we are aware that Robert hasn't shown that 5-tool for X amount of years. We are aware, but if we're talking ceiling on players, overall players, yes, Roberts is higher because he can actually play defense.
Correct. But to the second part of that, you could just plug him in at the DH. And I saw Hebrew's comment where the Mets have been looking for a DH forever, and it could be Mark Vientos for the future. It could.
It could.
But my question to you is, Ibby, what is more valuable to the team right now as they try to win a World Series, which we all agree we want, which we all agree is the goal? And if you win a World Series, it really doesn't matter who you trade for what, right? Like, the Cubs will never take back trading for Aroldis Chapman.
No. Never.
Because they won the World Series. Oh, and how'd the guy they traded for him work out with the Yankees? Was he was good. He's a good ball player.
Yeah,
he's not A-Rod. He never became a superstar. So I think the Cubs would make that trade again and again and again and again and again. So my point is this. Right now, in 2025, you could deploy Starling Marte at DH some of the time, who's been very good this year offensively. When Jesse Winker comes back, you can put him at DH. That was your original plan. That was your platoon. That could get you through the rest of the season. You can put some combination of Mauricio. Let's say you go out and you get a center fielder. Jeff McNeil comes and he plays second. Brett Beatty goes and he plays third most of the time. And then Ronnie Mauricio can DH. That covers you for DH. And then you could put Mauricio in at third base sometimes. You could DH Brett Beatty. You could also use the DH position to get Soto off of his feet. You could use it to get Alonso off of his feet. For those of you who are just pining for Luis Torrens, you can have him start at catcher. You could DH Alvarez. There's a lot of things you could do to cover yourself at DH. Again, I'd ask that question of who's going to play center field for the Mets. So right now, I don't give, and I say this with respect, Jose, not a diss. It's just how I speak. I don't give a single fuck about upside beyond right now because I want to win a World Series. Don't you? Doesn't everybody want to win a World Series? And so if Ibby, let me put it to you this way. You're iffy on Robert. And again, I hate to keep bringing it back to him because I don't even like him that much. I just think that he's a good fit. If I told you that you could trade Mark Vientos and his 4 more years of control, 4.5 years of control for Luis Robert. And Luis Robert was going to hit 225. And just let me simplify this. You trade Mark Vientos and his 4.5 years of control for Luis Robert. You're not going to sign Luis Robert. You're not going to pick up his option. And Vientos goes on to become a guy who, could hit 20 home runs, but is a part-time player, and you win a World Series with Luis Robert. Are you upset?
No, I won a World Series.
Yeah. You don't keep Robert
World Series
after this year. You pay the $2 million buyout. And Robert and then Vientos goes on in the next 4 years with the White Sox. He hits 110 home runs, 20 a year, a little over 20 a year. But you won the World Series.
I won a World Series.
Do you care?
No.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
I won a World Series.
And I'll ask that same question to everybody in the chat. Do you care? Do you care about Mark Vientos then? And again, it's not about Vientos. It's not to say that I don't like Vientos, and I'm not singing the praises blindly of Luis Robert. It's about what gets you there. And this is the sentiment that is crazy to me. Heber says, I would rather the Mets do absolutely nothing than any of the trades that are being suggested. And then followed it up by saying, that's because you don't know anything about baseball, John. So I don't know anything about baseball, but you had the audacity in front of 500 viewers to say this sentence and claim that you know. Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you. It's insane. And you can't just simplify it to just trade Beatty, because Ibby, what if Vientos has more value? Are you going to let that stand in the way? I wouldn't. No. I like Mauricio better than both of them. I think Ronnie Mauricio is the best overall player between Vientos and Beatty. I think he's probably a tick below Beatty at third base defensively right now, but I think he's a better athlete, and I think if he just played third base, he could be as good as Beatty. I think he has more potential with the bat than Beatty, and he is clearly a better better fielder than Vientos. So I think he's the best one. He's the guy I'd be most reluctant to trade.
Yeah.
I would trade him for Luis Robert and watch him go on and make the Hall of Fame and not re-sign Luis Robert if Luis Robert meant we got a World Series. I don't think that's ridiculous. I just don't understand. I don't get it.
It's, again, these emotions, these ideas of players, it's no matter what. And it's funny because I had said this to Dexter before we actually went live, when we said, like, oh, here's the idea, we're going to talk about these trades and this and that. And I was like, you do realize that we're going to get crushed, right? And he's like, what do you mean? I go, it's trade season. You're talking prospects, no matter what. And we both went in blind with our things. It's like, no matter who you offer, someone's going to call you an idiot. Someone's going to say you're giving up too much. Same thing with me. And I sat 3 days, and I thought about mine. And I said, I'm going to try to make this right. I'm going to look at everyone else's systems, what can make sense, what's worth paying up for. And I did that. And I said, no matter what, everyone's going to hate what you say. And we're going to get a lot of flack for this entire segment. And sure enough, as I watched the comments roll in on the TikToks, on YouTube, everywhere, everyone hated it. And it's like, it's no matter what you say, everyone thinks that their ideas are better, and it's fine because everything is subjective. We're going to put everything out there, whatever. But it's the fun part of the season. But also sometimes people are just a little bit too adamant on certain things and they're a little bit off. But again, a phrase that I've been using a lot over the last 48 hours, agree to disagree.
Very fair. And again, look, I know stuff is going to get heated. Okay. That's part of debate. That is part of the fun. Okay. But I am trying to keep things. I do appreciate everybody who listens and everybody who watches. But I am trying to keep it as respectful as possible. And I say this, Ibby, with respect. I shouldn't have to say this, but don't come into the chat on a show that we bust our asses to make and tell me that I don't know ball. Like,
save that for me. I'll tell him he doesn't know ball.
Like, I just don't do that. And I don't know where, I got the receipts. Good. Keep them. I don't care. I've been wrong before, and I will admit it. I admitted it 6 weeks ago when I was wrong about Brett Beatty not being a viable major leaguer. I don't believe in Brett Beatty being a viable everyday player. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't invest in him long-term, but I was wrong about him not being a major leaguer. He's clearly a major league contributor. Nobody dumped on him more than I did for months, and I admitted I was wrong. I admitted I was wrong about Jeff McNeil being better at center field than any of us would have thought. Yeah. I would just love either one of those folks to come here and tell me that they were. It's easy to do it now. It's easy to disagree now because none of us know what's going to happen.
Just checking
Super chat here.
Yeah. Oh, here we go.
Danger Zone.
Thank you, Danger.
Y'all ever get compared to George and Jerry? I don't think so.
We never have, but I do love Seinfeld. I got my Kramer poster right over here, so I do love Seinfeld, so I appreciate it. I do.
I do like I do like it. Shout out for the super chat. I've never been compared to, but sure, I'll take it. This is a good wrinkled Doug. John, do you seriously think it's a good idea to bring in Robert, who's been lost with Chavez here? That's the best argument for not bringing in Luis Robert or anybody. To really. Heber's point.
Anybody, yeah.
Don't bring in anybody because Chavez sucks, which I agree. Chavez is horrendous. He's not going to fix anybody. But, I think that maybe Robert just needs to change the scenery. He strikes me as a change of scenery guy. Ibby, before we get out of here, really quickly, we're going to be on the live show with Carson and Mets Weekly from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. We'll probably go a little bit past, make sure we don't miss any trades that come in last minute. It'll be here on the Til Mets Do Us Part YouTube channel. But yes. What are your predictions for the next couple of days as far as the Mets are concerned? Already got Gregory Soto. They got the second lefty. What do you think is going to happen? What do you want to happen?
Just want to say real quick, I love the Gregory. I know Gregory Soto had the rough game last night, gives up the hit, whatever. Not really worried about that. Love the fact that this team was able to add a power lefty to go with a more finesse lefty in Raley. Mets having two lefties in the pen. It's a rare sighting, so I love to see it. Made a lot of sense. Didn't give up too much for it either, so I'm all about it. When it comes to dealings, what do I think is going to happen? No matter what, I think that a bullpen arm is going to be attained. Now, frankly, I don't care who it is. I just said it in our chat before. I don't care what the name is. I want a legit eighth inning guy. If you tell me it's Bednar, if you tell me it's Peter Fairbanks, if you tell me it's Ryan Helsley, if you tell me it's Griffin Jacks, Johan Duran, I don't care. I want a legit eighth inning guy because I'm all about building that bridge and shortening the game with Diaz. That's what I want. That's what makes the most sense. If you told me I can only have one thing, I'm taking one of those bullpen arms. Are we going to get Luis Robert? It's possible. The fact that I keep on seeing their names put out there the most, I think that it is more and more possible. I do. So I will say, to the dismay of a lot of people in this chat, I will say that Luis Robert is a Met, and I will say that David Bednar is a Met. Those are my two.
Okay. I will be satisfied if the Mets get any option for center field, legitimate option. So I don't really consider like Steven Kwan because I don't know that he can play there. Any option to put into the center field mix. They need, like you, I want an eighth inning guy.
Got to get an eighth inning guy, no matter what.
I think, not what I want, I think the Mets will end up agreeing with some kind of lesser package. I don't think it will be for Vientos. I think the Mets will get Luis Robert. I think he's the guy that they consider to be the best option. If not, I could see them pivoting to like a Cedric Mullins or a Harrison Bader, and I just think that's ho-hum. It's fine. It's whatever. But I think they will get a center fielder. I think it will be Robert, and I think it will be for a guy or two in the 10 to 20 range of their prospects. I would like to see them get a eighth inning guy who has control. So you mentioned David Bednar. I don't think it's going to be Bednar.
Okay.
It would have been sexy if it was Clase, but we all know what's going on with that nonsense now. That's crazy. Obviously not going to be him. The person who I think it's most likely to be, and it's a bummer this person doesn't have control, but I could see it being Ryan Helsley. But Ryan Helsley might be he might have the best stuff. of the people that we're mentioning. Like, he might be the best guy. It just sucks because I don't think you're going to see this thing with Diaz opting out, but it's nice to get, if you're already gotten a rental reliever in Soto, it's nice to go get a controllable reliever. So it would just be nice to get somebody else, but also, like, if it's Ryan Helsley, I'm not going to be mad. So I think it's Robert. I think it's Helsley. And Ibby, I think there's a 50-50 chance that the Mets get a starting pitcher. I don't know who it is. I just think there's too much conversation.
There's a lot of smoke right now. A lot of smoke.
Yeah, I think there's too much smoke, whether that is for one of the Marlins pitchers, whether that is for Mitch Keller, whether it's for one of the guys from Arizona. You know, I just think there's too much going on. And I also think the Mets have a willingness to trade maybe Vientos, maybe Acuna with a prospect. Maybe that's enough to get you Sandy Alcantara. I don't know. I don't work in the front office. Yeah, but maybe giving them a guy with 4 years of control, maybe like a Vientos, and coupling that with somebody, maybe that's enough. Because there's also this rumor that the Mets would maybe call up McClain or Tong or Sproat if they don't get a starter. And I don't see, and that's the other thing I'll just say, I do not see the Mets trading, and they've all but said it, but I never saw the Mets trading Jonah Tong, Brandon Sproat, or Nolan McClain. I think those are the only three untouchables that the Mets have, and probably Carson Bench. I think though, but it's just as far as pitchers go, I think those are the untouchable players. I think anybody else can be had. I do. And I think there's people like of the Mauricio, Vientos, Beatty. I think there's like people they'd like to trade more and people they'd like to trade less, but I think they would also trade any one of them in the right deal.
Shout out to TJ, who often frequents our chat, good friend of mine. He mentioned to me last night as we were watching the game, he goes, because we're talking about, the Vientoses, the Mauricios, the Beatties, and have you. He's like, I feel like my ranking of this changes every inning because someone's always doing something, and you're just like, maybe I'll trade this guy. Maybe I'll trade this guy. Maybe I'll trade this guy. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out. I will not be shocked at all if someone from the Mets major league roster is dealt away. One of those glut, if you will, third baseman, second baseman, what have you. I would not be shocked if one of them is moved, but I believe that if one of them is moved, and we'll use Vientos since he's been the one that's been mentioned the most recently, I think that he's only being moved if it's for a pitcher. And to add on to that, a pitcher that is of the ilk that David Stearns mentioned that offers you a little bit of a higher ceiling. So again, if that's Cabrera, if that's Alcantara, like if it's one of those guys and Vientos is a part of a package, it would not shock me. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm just saying it would not shock me if it does.
Armand saying, I say the Mets trade for Duran, the relief pitcher Duran, center field Harrison Bader, starting pitcher Andrew Haney. If they did that, I would be slightly overwhelmed. I think Duran boosts the other two. But based on what I was saying, Ibby, and what I've been calling for, I can't say that would make me upset. Knowing that the Mets got a lefty, knowing that the Mets got a setup man, knowing that the Mets got a center fielder and a starting pitcher, that would not, the center fielder and the starting pitcher would not excite me, but the totality of the deadline, that would be enough for me. So,
yeah, that would be, obviously, Duran there would be like awesome to have that type of power on the back
cream
end.
Of the crop,
like,
for sure.
Like that would be great. So I understand why those are the three choices, because obviously you're paying up big to get someone like Duran and you're paying a little bit less to get the other two. So I appreciate the realism, if you will, of that, not just saying that you're going to go out there and get, Duran, Alcantara and whoever else. But no, it's going to be fun. I hope it's going to be fun at least. But I do think I trust David Stearns, and everyone's on, sitting on their hands and very anxious over everything. But I trust the guy, trust the process, and I think that he understands that this fan base sat through what Epler did and not be aggressive at a time when he should have been aggressive. And I think that he understands what John was mentioning before, and I agree with that. The NL is wide open. It's not as one-sided as people thought it would be. Dodgers are banged up, and a lot of other things are open-ended. You look towards the AL as well. You can say you like the Tigers, but their offense has been dying, even though they have the best pitcher in baseball. Like, there's a lot of question marks across the league. It's why I also think a lot of teams are so, not so anxious to sell because they see how things are so open. So I think the Mets will be aggressive. I think that they will go out there and get what is needed to help this team compete that can help them in October and hopefully ultimately win the whole thing. So we'll see.
I'm going to say something. And then, so as a olive branch to Hebrew Hammer, I'm going to say I would rather trade Brett Beatty than Mark Vientos too. But then Game from War said, if the Mets trade Vientos for Bader, we will riot, to which Hebrew Hammer said, there are people in here who would actually make that trade. Can you believe this? Not a single person has said they would make that trade. Not me, not you. No one has said that. That's disingenuous. So there's my olive branch, but also you're being disingenuous. Anyway, come on. I have to go. This has been fun. In a way that, sitting on a bed of thumbtacks is fun, but it's been something. It's been a time. What a time to be alive. No, I do appreciate everybody in the comments. The debate is always great. And I'm sure we're going to see more of it over the next couple of days. Thank you for tuning in early. Thank you to the 541 people with eyes on us. If you missed any of the show, you can go back and watch it on this YouTube channel as soon as we're done. Follow us on Instagram, on Twitter, on Blue Sky, on Substack. If you search Til Mets Do Us Part, TikTok, thank you. You will find us no matter where it is. And be sure to tune into this YouTube channel on Thursday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. as we are live covering with the boys over at Mets Weekly, the trade deadline up to the second, all the haps. I'm John. That's Ibby. This is Til Mets Do Us Part. We will see you on Thursday. Happy hunting for those trades. Peace.